Greetings, friends and fellow citizens and fellow patriots. My name is Tom Zawistowski, and I'm the president of the We the People Convention. And I welcome you to our We the People Convention News and Opinion podcast for Saturday, January 30th, 2021. As you can see behind me, the flag is still flying upside down because we are in distress. That is not a desecration of the flag. It is a symbol that our nation is in distress. And I guarantee you, by the time you're done listening to this podcast, you're going to know that our nation's in distress. But you're also going to know that the fight's far from over, and we're engaged in the fight, and we're fighting the fight. So that's why you're here. You're here to listen about what's going on in our country, and what you can personally do to defend your personal liberty, freedom, and prosperity, and defend our country. And so that's what we're going to talk about. If you get our emails and texts, if you don't, go to wethepeopleconvention.org right now and just put your email and your phone number in on the front page, right on the front, because our emails only get through to about 20% of people. Our text messages get through to like 40 or 50. So, that's why we have your text message, your text phone number, so we can text you because the emails just don't get through. The other way you can just make sure that you go to wethepeopleconvention.org, just check in once a day, because there are stories that I post every single day that are important for you to know. So now I want to pick up because this week I sent out a podcast that talked about why the Maricopa County, Arizona audit is key to the voter fraud narrative. And many of you, wrote to me about that, and you said, geez, okay, they're going to, audit these ballots. And again, to recap, the reason Arizona's, what they're doing is important is because right now, the whole issue of voter fraud is kind of like he said, she said, right? We say they stole the election, millions of ballots. They say there's no evidence of that whatsoever. That's a conspiracy theory. So both sides are right because there's no proof. The Maricopa County situation is a chance to bring some proof to tilt that to one side or the other. Now, after last week's broadcast, many of you, including my wife, Nan, said, well, they've had these damn machines and they've had, these ballots for 2 months. They probably have covered their tracks. We're not going to be able to, find out the truth. And I did look into that. I watched some videotapes of them. Some of the people were involved from the state Senate. Okay. And again, understand, this is a fight between the Republican-controlled Senate of Arizona and the Republican-controlled Maricopa County Board of Elections. All right. The Board of Elections refused to allow an audit of their ballots until after Joe Biden was inaugurated. Okay. The Senate said, we don't care. We're going to find the truth here, and we're going to make sure this gets audited. Now, here's the key thing. The key thing is that the Maricopa County Board of Elections, again, what do they have to hide? Announced this Wednesday that they were going to hire 2 different auditors to do an audit of the ballots. And they were going to have those auditors that they hired inspect these machines and inspect the ballots. Well, not so fast. We're not stupid. And I thank many of you who called the state senators that we posted last week to say, you got to make sure this is an independent audit. Because what just happened is the state senators said, oh, no. We don't care what you voted to do. The Republican leader of the Arizona Senate announced Friday that she had hired an independent auditor to scour election results in Maricopa County, where supervisors voted earlier in the week to hire 2 firms to audit election equipment and software used in November's election. The move comes after the county refused to allow the Senate access to election equipment, copies of ballots, and other materials under a subpoena issued by lawmakers, some of whom continue to question whether Democrat President Joe Biden won. Senate President Karen Farnes said in a statement that the auditor will be tasked with doing an audit much larger in scope than the county intends. Fawn said the Senate's forensic audit will bring accuracy and detail to the process, and with that, restore integrity into the election process. So hats off to Senator Fawn and Arizona for not getting hoodwinked in this. All right. They're working hard to do a fair audit. Now, again, does that rule out the Dems cheating? Does that rule out the Never Trumpers cheating? I don't know how we can rule that out, but we've got to go forward with these efforts, and they are, and I wanted you to know that, and I want you to know that that's really important. And as I said, after the inauguration in the last couple podcasts, the single most important thing we must do is we must prove the fraud. That's going to be the historical record. Okay. And so there was a ruling this week, again in Virginia, where a court ruled that ballots missing postmarks that came in after the election were illegal. The Virginia Board of Elections rule allowing officials to count ballots that arrived without a postmark up to 3 days after the election was illegal, a state judge ruled. Virginia Circuit Court Judge William Eldridge ruled the state's late mail-in ballot law violated state statutes and permanently banned the law in future Virginia elections, the Public Interest Legal Foundation announced on Monday. This is a big win for the rule of law, said the PILF President and General Counsel Christian Adams said in a statement. This consent decree gives Mr. Reed everything he required, a permanent ban on accepting ballots without postmarks after Election Day, and is a loss for the Virginia bureaucrats who said ballots could come in without these protections. Now again, it doesn't reverse the election, but it does take away tools in the future. That's what we've got to do. Because, folks, we got to win in 2022. And how are we going to win if they can cheat? And there's going to be more. I've said to you last week, there's going to be more coming forward about reforming election rules, including here in Ohio. I had a very good conversation with a member of the Board of Elections here in Ohio this week, and he's writing up a document that I'm going to share with the people in the state of Ohio, and you around the country will get to see it, so maybe you can take it to your state. But the bottom line is, people are very engaged in fixing this mess, especially in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, okay? We can't ever let this happen again. Now, the other story that continues that we got to keep an eye on is that they're trying to impeach President Trump for something he just didn't do, okay? And that is instigate the people who broke into the Capitol building. And there's growing evidence that the Capitol assault was planned weeks ahead of time. And that helps Trump in his case, basically this bogus impeachment is just that, bogus. Growing evidence of advanced planning and coordination of the January 6th storming of the Capitol undermines claims that the rioters were responding spontaneously to former President Trump's speech to supporters about a mile and a half away, according to legal and intelligence experts. As Senate Democrats mull their options for convincing or censoring Trump and banning him from future public office for allegedly inciting insurrections. Experts said their incitement case against him was dealt a severe blow this week when federal prosecutors charged 3 men in the Capitol attack, alleging their communications and coordination dated back to November. Okay? The Trump impeachment is going nowhere. They don't have the Republican support. They're just trying to bloody him up and bloody you and I up, okay? And it's not going to work because we're going to fight back. But again, everywhere you're hearing this narrative about, oh my, this was the worst attack in American history, right? Worst attack in American history. And it's anything but that. It's anything but that. Here's something that many of you haven't seen before, okay? In 1983, many of you watching this were alive in 1983. The May 19th Communist Organization detonated a bomb in the U.S. Senate in an attempt to kill Republicans. There's a picture on your screen right now. Susan Rosenberg was arrested for this. She was pardoned by Clinton. She's now an administrator for Black Lives Matter and now does fundraising and administrative work for BLM. I guess bombing the U.S. Capitol to kill Republicans is different, right? That wasn't worse than, a bunch of people, walking through the hallways and pushing their way in. I guess bombing the U.S. Capitol to kill Republicans is different. I have heard news reports all week long about how last Wednesday's riot was the worst day in American history. What should we call bombing the U.S. Capitol? See, this is just how nuts it is and how they ignore history because they're culpable. Again, did any of you guys see the video this week of the women protesters who stormed the Capitol during the Kavanaugh hearings to try to stop the Kavanaugh hearings. And they, in fact, did stop the Kavanaugh hearings, okay? And nobody talks about that. And guess what? None of them got charged with felonies. They did exactly what happened on the 6th. They forced their way into the Capitol. They interrupted the process of the government, a significant thing, approving a Supreme Court justice. And they were charged by the Capitol Police. They were charged by the city of Washington, and they all got off. And there were thousands of them in the Capitol building. But they're going to charge us with felonies and call us domestic terrorists, right? No, we're not going to let them do that. And so this week, there's more of this attempt to paint you and I as something that we are not. The Department of Homeland Security, DHS, put out a terrorism bulletin on Wednesday. Due to the heightened threat environment across the United States, which DHS believes will persist in the weeks following the successful presidential inauguration. It expires on April 30th. So they're keeping troops in D.C. through March with this trumped up bull about, there's a threat to us. Our lives are in danger. It's totally made up, folks. Through 2020, domestic violent extremists targeted individuals with opposing views engaged in First Amendment protected nonviolent protest activity. DVEs motivated by a range of issues, including anger over COVID-19 restrictions, the 2020 election results, and the police use of force, have plotted and on occasion carried out attacks against government facilities. Yeah, like Antifa and BLM are doing today, still today, without anybody stopping them. DHS is concerned these same drivers to violence will remain through early 2021, and some DVEs may be emboldened by the January 6th breach of the U.S. Capitol building, Washington, D.C., to target elected officials and government facilities. Why then are you instigating this? Why are you telling lies? Why are you going on TV and talking about, this white nationalism and white supremacists and domestic terrorism are, the biggest threats to our national security, right? So we're running an ad. We're running a story, the white supremacist myth exposed by the FBI's own data. And last week, I told you about the fact that the FBI finds and prosecutes less than 200 domestic terrorists per year, and then Biden calls out 26,000 troops. Now, last week, I promised to show you this chart that basically tells you, what the number of terrorists were per year. And so I forgot to put it up last week. It's on the website at wethepeopleconvention.org. But as you can see by this chart, they only found 183. The FBI only found 183 domestic terrorists, okay, in their with all the resources they've got. And you're calling this a threat to our nation, the existential threat. So here's what we're doing. We're going to use some of your donations, some of your dollars to run ads this week coming up on Salem stations, on Hugh Hewitt, on Larry Elder, on Seth Gorka, on their everything but their Charlie Kirk. There was no Charlie Kirk ads, and there's no Dennis Prager ads. But on the rest of the the speakers on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of this week, you're going to hear this ad on Salem Radio because we got to get this 183 figure out. Here's our ad.
Don't dare call them protesters. They were a riotous mob, insurrectionists, domestic terrorists.
Have you ever met a white nationalist or domestic terrorist in your life? Well, apparently the FBI hasn't met many either, because last year, using all the resources at their disposal, they only found and prosecuted 183 of them out of 330 million Americans.
The rise of domestic violent extremism is a serious and growing national security threat. The Biden administration will confront this threat.
183 people are not a serious threat to our national security, but the Biden administration and the Democrat socialists claiming that all 74 million Trump supporters are domestic terrorists is a threat to our national security, and it's a lie and it's dangerous. Go to wethepeopleconvention.org and read our story about how the myth of white supremacy is exposed by the FBI's own data. Go to wethepeopleconvention.org to get the facts today. Okay, so I hope you like it. I think it's going to make the point. It's going to reach like 1 million people, and it's going to bring them to our website where they can read more details about, wow, this is a myth. This charge that, domestic terrorism is the big threat. It's just not true. And remember, when I said 183 domestic terrorists, folks, that's not just white supremacists. That's not, those are Islamic terrorists. Those are all kinds of environmental terrorists. That's all kinds of people, okay? And so I wrote an article this week, and you can see it on the website at wethepeopleconvention.org, where it says, beware the Biden war on domestic terrorism, okay? Because they're playing with fire, and we need to call them out. So I'm going to take a second here to read this for you, and then we'll take a short break. The most startling aspect of the Obama administration, the politicization of our national security apparatus, is now on full display almost nightly on MSNBC. John Brennan, the former head of the CIA, and James Clapper, the former director of national intelligence, are frequent guests that using their platforms not to warn of pending threats from China or other rogue nations abroad, but to pontificate about the so-called dangers posed by their fellow Americans. Recently, Brennan noted with much glee that the Biden administration is moving in laser-like fashion to try to uncover as much as they can about what looks like very similar to insurgency movements that we've seen overseas. A domestic threat that he categorizes as an unholy alliance involving religious extremists, authoritarians, fascists, bigots, racists, nativists, even libertarians. This clown said that on TV, and some of you saw Tucker Carlson just call him out on that. Indeed, Brennan's madness has now found a home in the Biden White House, and concerningly so. Jen Psaki, the newly installed Biden White House press secretary, recently announced an administration-wide initiative to crack down on domestic terrorism in light of Trump supporters invading the U.S. Capitol building. The administrative effort involves U.S. intelligence officials, the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, brainstorming ways to counter the threat posed by violent domestic extremists. Okay? You can read the rest of the article by going to wethepeopleconvention.org, but at the end, I said that he and his administration must end these false and misleading attacks on half the people in our nation before it's too late. What happened on January 6th was not just a few hundred people wrongly acting out their frustrations. It was also precipitated in large part by the government at all levels not addressing serious concerns of tens of millions of citizens who have a right to have their grievances heard and addressed. Unfortunately, that frustration has only grown because of the way the media and politicians have exploited this event for political gain, led by President Biden and his new administration. The last thing anyone needs is for the new president to fuel the flames of what could become the biggest national security threat of all, a nation at war with itself. Only a fool would effectively declare war on half the American people, as Biden did, and not recognize the serious ramifications. It's time for this president to reconsider his actions before things get out of hand, just like they did on January 6th. Otherwise, this administration will just be doing what it falsely accused the past president of having done, and that is inciting insurrection. That's the bottom line. And my question is that their intent? Is that what they want to do? We're going to take a little break. You're listening to the We the People Convention News and Opinion podcast. My name is Tom Zawistowski. The We the People Convention News and Opinion radio program is paid for by donors like you. You can donate to the We the People Convention and support our cause by going to wethepeopleconvention.org or by sending your check in any amount to We the People Convention, P.O. Box 6211, Akron, Ohio, 44312. All right, and we're back, and we thank those of you who do donate to the We the People Convention, because that's what gives us the money to buy this ad on the Salem Radio Network this week to counter the false narrative. You know, that there's a domestic terrorist hiding behind every tree. That's what they want you to believe. That's what they want the American public to believe. How many have you heard anywhere on any news media, on any website, the stat that I quoted for you of 183 domestic terrorists. That's it. We got to get that out. Your donations give us the ability to get that out. And I thank you for that. That's important. And I need you to share that, with other people. Share the article, The Myth of White Supremacy Exposed by the FBI's Own Data, with everyone you know so they know the truth. All right, so on to other things. Many of you are aware of this thing that happened on Wall Street this week with this stock for a company called GameStop. Now, GameStop is not a very successful company. Basically, they buy video games and sell video games. It's a pretty low-level business. But Wall Street was trying to basically depress the stock value, and so that they could short sell it, meaning they could bet on the stock going down. So these hedge funds do this all the time. It's called stock manipulation, folks, but we make it legal, and they make billions of dollars. So the long story short is these young people on a thing called Reddit, which has been around forever since the internet began practically, and it's got all these forums and places where you can talk about everything from antique cars to how to raise a cow. Okay, but on this there was a forum that was about basically buying this GameStop and a couple other stocks because they saw that it was trying to be depressed. And if they could buy the stock, they could drive the price up. The hedge funds that were short selling, who were trying to, to increase it, they were going to lose a bunch of money. Well, what happened is they lost like $21.7 billion by these young people on an internet, blog, basically coming with a plan to beat them at their own game. Now, what they did on Reddit was not illegal. It was fair and square. And these hedge funds, though, they can't have where they lose, right? So what happened is there's a company called Robinhood, and Rush Limbaugh talked about this on his show. Robinhood is the software that these kids and these guys on Reddit use to buy the stock in GameStop. And what Robinhood, think about that, how deceitful this is. And this is the left in everything they do. Robinhood, right? Steals from the rich and gives to the poor. That's the story of Robinhood. Yeah, they named it Robinhood. It was owned by hedge funds. They were taking the data from all these small people who they were enticing to go into the markets, and they were selling that data to the hedge funds so they knew which stocks the Robinhood people were buying so they could short sell them, manipulate them, and steal their money. That's how bad this is. But when they got beat at their own game, what did they do? They forced the market to stop trading on this stock because they were just, the one hedge fund literally had to go to other hedge funds and borrow $2.8 billion to stay in business. This is how big a hit they got. But what Rush Limbaugh did is he talked about that this is another symbol of what's going on in our country, that it's not fair. It's a rigged game from Wall Street to Main Street, in the politics, in the academics, in the sports, into whatever you want to talk about. And he said, it's a classic example. Folks, it's not just politics now. These elites are bent out of shape that a bunch of average, ordinary users had figured out how to make themselves billionaires. There are those who are allowed to make a lot of money and those who aren't, and they made sure they took action by stopping trading. And then when Robinhood came back online the next day, you could only sell your stock, you couldn't buy. And so the stock crashed and the hedge funds could get out because their short sell, failed, and they could just buy stocks at the regular price. It's fixed. It's rigged. And this, and to give you some idea of how corrupt we are, here's a story that will give you some idea of the difference. China asset manager chief Li Xiaomin was executed in bribery case this week. The Chinese executed this guy for stealing like $260 million. They executed him. You know what's going to happen to these hedge fund directors? Nothing. You know what happened to all the people in 2008 who stole your and my money and manipulated the housing market and damaged it to the point where some of us have still not even recovered? Nothing happened. None of them went to jail. Now, I'm bringing this up to you, and I'm trying to put this in context because we're talking in the last few weeks about what are we going to do? What is our next step as the American people to protect and defend our freedom, liberty, and prosperity in our nation? And we've got to understand who we're really fighting. And we've talked about convention of states, third parties, civil war. We've talked about, all kinds of things that we can do to try to restore our republic. But we're focused on the political. This story needs to be a warning to us that the problem is the financial. It's big tech and the oligarchs and big Wall Street. It's the globalist billionaires. They buy the government. Joe Biden didn't win anything. The billionaires bought the election, just like the Rockefellers and Carnegies did back in the 1900s. Okay? The reality is that our problem is the big money. And whatever we do, we've got to attack them because they control the politics. These 40 executive orders that Joe Biden has put through, those are all dictated by the people who bought his election, who donated for the fraud. Okay? That's what this is all about. It's about global power. And until we figure that out and act on it, we're going to not succeed in what we're trying to accomplish. And I'm going to talk more about that as we go along. But the other part of it is, we've got to understand that things are not what we think they are. If you haven't seen the movie The Matrix, or the series The Matrix, which I never watch sci-fi. I've said this on this podcast in the past. I don't like science fiction. I read biographies. Okay. I read other stuff, documentaries, movies. I don't watch, science fiction. But The Matrix caught my attention because we're living in the Matrix. Folks, nothing we think is true is true. The GameStop proves it. The election proves it. The courts prove it. What the FBI is doing and the documents that just came out about the FBI proves it. There is no rule of law. There is no U.S. Constitution. There is no government. There is no representation. There is no free market capitalism. It's crony capitalism. And what we really are fighting is that we don't have America anymore. It doesn't exist. We're not going to get it back because we didn't have it. It's been a lie, okay? And what we're moving to now is a corporate fascism. Fascism is when the government takes over the means of production to manipulate prices and control the populace. Capitalist fascism is when the companies take over the government and use the government to control the people and the means of production. This is gross. This is obscene. This is the road to serfdom, and we've got to fight it. And the evidence is all around us. Again, this week, what happened? The only person that has been charged in a Russiagate by Durham is this attorney Clinesmith. And he was going to be sent. He pleaded guilty to changing a critical email when the FBI asked the CIA if Carter Page was working with them, if he was a CIA asset. They wrote back and said, yes, he was talking to Russians on our behalf to give us intelligence. This Clinesmith guy got that email and changed it. He changed it to say that he was not a CIA asset and was talking to the FBI, to the Russians. That was the key to the FISA court giving the FBI and the DOJ the ability to illegally spy on the Trump campaign. This was the triggering event. This guy should have gone to prison for a long time, right? It could have been a term of 5 years in prison and a fine of $250,000. And you know what he got? He got 12 months of probation and 400 hours of community service. No fine, no jail time. It's outrageous. It's not justice. And the judge talked about how, he's had his reputation hurt and he's probably going to be disbarred as a lawyer and he lost his government job and he's been attacked in public and that's enough. Are you kidding me? They put Stephanopoulos in jail. He did nothing. They put Roger Stone in jail. He did nothing. Right? The rest of the Trump people. This is our problem. Okay? And here's another example this week. Some of you may have heard about the FBI did a pre-dawn raid on a guy who was a blogger or a poster on Twitter who was a conservative. And in 2016, he had put out memes that were telling Democrats, text this number, text Clinton to this number, and you don't have to go vote. Okay? And he was using misdirection. And he said, be sure to vote on Wednesday. This is in 2016. The Justice Department and the FBI arrested this guy in a pre-dawn raid and charged him, with crimes of manipulating the election. It's outrageous. And the section that they charged him with doesn't even cover that kind of activity. That's horrible. That's the thuggish, illegal mafia FBI. The FBI should be disbanded. They are criminals. They are not law enforcement. They should all be locked up. The FBI is a criminal organization. Just go to Just the News and read the documents that President Trump released right before he left the White House. It's proof positive. Jim Comey lied. They spied on the Trump campaign. They fabricated evidence. They lied to the FISA court. Hopefully Durham is going to charge these dirtbags, as John Solomon keeps saying. But here's this case, which is another Roger Stone type thing. We're going to use massive, police materials to go after this guy who's a daggone, Twitter poster, from 2016. But, then Jim Hoff from the Gateway Pundit comes up and says, hey, you just arrested that guy. Here, we've got a person who did exactly the same thing to Trump supporters. This woman named Christina Wong in November 8th of 2016. Hey, Trump supporters, skip the poll lines at election 2016 and text in your vote. Text votes are legit. Or vote tomorrow on Super Wednesday. That is literally exactly what the FBI arrested the conservative guy for doing. And Jim Hoff and the Gateway Pundit are putting this up and saying, you're going to arrest her? Yeah. So far, they haven't arrested her. This is the problem. And it's a big problem. And we got lots of work to do. But the one thing we've got to do is we've got to know the truth. I talk about this all the time. I will never lie to you. If I say something incorrect, I will correct it, and I will never intentionally lie to you. We can't lie to each other. We got to know the truth. So this week, I read 2 articles that were truthful, that shook me to my core. And I'm going to close the show talking about these 2 articles. You're going to have to read them. The first article I posted and sent out and said, when and how Trump actually lost the election fight. And this is a first-hand account by Patrick Byrne, the guy that founded Overstock.com, of everything that happened where he was personally present during the fight to prove the voter fraud and make sure that President Trump was duly elected. You got to read it. It's long. There's 3 parts, okay? There's 3 parts. What you're going to find is going to disgust you. It was a clown show. Byrne uses a different word. Rudy Giuliani, they were paying him $100,000 a week. He was drunk half the time. Didn't have a clue what he was doing. The communications between the legal team and the campaign was 0. Trump was not even involved with holding them accountable, having them report to him. He was being lied to by people in the White House and outside the White House. It was horrible. The only good thing you'll see is that Byrne talks about the fact that the proposal we made in our ad that you helped pay for in the Washington Times, remember the full page ad that we took, right? That said, exercising extraordinary authority in defense of our vote may be required because martial law is better than civil war. And in this ad, we said that President Trump, when the courts and the legislatures all fail, when they do not enforce the 12th Amendment, when this thing is not getting a fair hearing in the courts, you need to impose limited temporary martial law to have the U.S. military oversee a free and fair national revote. In these documents, you'll see Byrne talks about that they actually considered it in multiple different ways. And so they literally were going to use the military to go in and get the ballots and have a recount on live streaming TV. And then if the ballots counted up okay, because he talks about the fact that every voting machine, I'm going to read this one line from this story, and you got to go to wethepeopleconvention.org and read every bit of this. You've got to do it. You owe it to yourself to know the truth, because we were lied to. We were misled. It's gross. But in this beginning, he says, over the last couple of decades, as township, counties, and states have been pitched on the virtues of electronic voting systems over the Stone Age democracy tools, which were done with paper ballots and simple mechanical machines, the pitches all came with one promise: there will always be a paper ballot failsafe. So in the event of a broken election, you can always just open up the boxes and count the ballots. And so his position was that because this was broken, we should count the ballots. And because they wouldn't give them to us, we should go in with the National Guard and seize them. And he talks about why they thought they could get away with that and publicly make that clear. But then he talks about how they game planned it so that if the vote didn't come out right, they wouldn't just declare Trump the winner. Then they would have the military oversee a revote so that the people could choose the real winner. All that was good. And it culminates in a meeting on the 23rd of December, right before Christmas, in the White House. And we covered that meeting on our show very in depth, because after that meeting, they had a plan to get these machines, to get the ballots. They had evidence of foreign interference. This guy talks all about it. You got to read it. This Byrne guy may not be 100% right, but he was there. It's a first-person account. And he tells you what electronic evidence they had. They talk about the analysts they had, but they also talk about how dysfunctional the whole effort was. Okay? And what happened is they came out of that meeting on the 23rd at the White House with a plan that everyone agreed on. But the lawyers in the White House were undermining that plan, and they never executed it. And that's why Donald Trump lost the election fight. He didn't lose the election. A lot of you guys accused me when I sent out the text about this story that you said he lost the election. I've never said he's lost the election. He lost the election fight because they were grossly incompetent. You need to go to wethepeopleconvention.org and read the story when and how Trump actually lost the election fight. And you need to read all 3 articles. There's links at the bottom, because this is the truth we need to understand. And after reading this, you wouldn't want Donald Trump to have anything to do with a third party. They couldn't put together a third party if their life depended on it, because they don't have the organizational skills. They don't have the political skills. They don't have the people in their circle. And President Trump needs to do some soul searching. He needs to get in touch with his base. He needs to learn what we know, because it's now clear by reading these documents, he don't know jack. After 4 years, he may have learned some hard lessons, but man, he ain't ready for big time. And if he's going to run again and be president for a second term in 2024, he needs to go to school and we can teach him. But I'm frightened by this article. You should be frightened by this article. You need to read it. The second article was equally frightening to me. I posted it, but I haven't sent anything out on it, so you're hearing about it for the first time. America's military is best in the world, but not for long. This story is chilling. Despite trillions of dollars that President Trump got for the military to rebuild the military, our military is a joke. This article spells it out, chapter and verse. What they did to our military, what the Obama people did to our military, is what they're trying to do to you and me today. They use all this political correctness. They used all this gender nonsense. They use all the anti-religion stuff to destroy our military. Our officers are pathetic. They have destroyed our military academies. Read this article. It's horrifying. There is no code of honor. Our military is so fat and out of shape, we can't fight. 17%, 1 out of 5 of our soldiers are not fit enough to fight. We are behind in technology. We've let the Chi-Coms steal all our technology, and now all the technology that gave us advantage is made by them. We don't make it. Our main advantages are 11 aircraft carriers, more than the rest of the world combined. No other country, I think, has more than 2, okay? They have hypersonic weapons that can kill our aircraft carriers in a minute. The Chinese could sink all of our aircraft carriers immediately if they go to war with us, and they're going to war with us. You need to understand that. China is going to war. They are going to conquer the world. And when you read this article, you will be disgusted. You will learn how they, remember the stories of the Obama years that these women, became Army Rangers, right? And went through the SEAL team training? Yeah, read this article and it will document for you how they cheated every step of the way. They've integrated females into, and this week they just said that girls in the Army can wear, ponytails and lipstick and stuff like that. Lipstick in a foxhole. They show you in this article the studies that talk about how having women with men in war completely degrades the performance of that unit. They've studied this. They are not picking people in the military because they're excellent, because they can fight. They're picking them because of their gender, their race. We're giving transgender surgeries to soldiers. You want to be in a foxhole with someone who's so mentally ill, they don't know if they're a boy or a girl, and you're going to trust them in a foxhole under pressure to keep their sanity? That's what we're doing. I beg you to read this article. America's military is the best in the world, but not for long. And see how bad it is. Because it's horrible. And so this week, what did we see this week with the military, right? How about this? How about Chinese bombers simulate an attack on U.S. Navy aircraft carrier in the South China Sea this week? The Chinese threw a whole fleet of jets, bombers, fighters, all kinds of support aircraft at our fleet in the South China Sea this week to say, we're not afraid of you. And they're not afraid of us. They're at war with us. And we are totally ill-prepared because we've lost our frickin' minds. Because we don't choose people because of their ability. We choose them for things that they can't control. We flipped America on its head, and it's going to kill us. It's going to kill you and I. It's insane. And we let them do it. And the Biden administration, every single person that he's appointed has direct ties to China. The woman that they just confirmed to be the U.S. ambassador to the UN gave a speech at a Confucius Institute, which the Chinese paid for to put in all of our universities, and she talked about how we need to be more like China. She's now our UN person. We got every single person that he's appointed as a direct tie to China. And here's what China's really doing. This happened this week too. China says digital yuan doesn't aim to challenge the dollar. Okay? And basically, the Chinese are trying to establish a digital currency that will be kind of like Bitcoin in a way, okay? And they're trying to get Russia and other countries that hate America to use that instead of the dollar. They're literally going to say there will be no money in transactions in China, meaning that the American companies and the global companies that want to do business in China, they're going to force them to use their currency. Let me explain to you what this means to you. To you. If the US dollar ceases to become the standard for the world, that all business is done in US dollars. Why? Because it's considered the safest, right? And so people from even the most despotic countries put their money in the US because it's safe, right? If China and Russia get their way, they are going to make this digital currency the official currency of business in the world. The day that happens, everything you own, every dollar you have in your IRA, in your bank account, your house, every asset you have will be depreciated immediately by like 50%. Go research it. That's how important it is to us to have the unfair advantage of having the American dollar as a world currency. This effort by the Chinese is a challenge on the dollar and is an attack on us because they need to destroy us to succeed. And guess what we have to do? We have to destroy them to preserve Western civilization. And we're not going to do it through the Biden administration, that's for sure. Okay? Go read that article because it's got a lot of important stuff on it. Now, nothing of doom and gloom. We talked about it last week. We're in the fight we're in. We got to deal with it. Okay? We're far from done. We got to fight the fights. So you've probably heard about the Democrats want to get rid of the filibuster. Well, why do they want to get rid of the filibuster? They want to get rid of the filibuster because then they can pass everything they want to do with 51 votes, meaning Kamala Harris and all the Democrats. As vice president, she gets to vote when it's a tie. 2 Democrats, Joe Manchin from West Virginia and Kirsten Sinema from Arizona, who's kind of a nut job, but she has said she will never vote to eliminate the filibuster. This is huge. This will stop many of the most egregious things that Biden's trying to do with his executive orders and with legislation from passing. So we can fight, okay? Federal courts blocked Biden's executive order on deportations under the same law they used against Trump. Again, just like when Harry Reid changed the vote to confirm judges and everyone said it's going to come back to bite you, and we got 3 judges passed with 51 votes in the Senate because of that mistake they made. Yeah, when they sued Trump and they stopped him from doing some executive orders, guess what? They established precedent. The Texas court filed, and basically what it says is this: immediately stay on deportations of criminal aliens in our country. People that ICE has arrested already who've committed crimes who need to be deported. Biden was saying, you can't deport them. The court ruled, oh, yes, they can, because you have law that says you have to give 100 days notice before you can change it, and therefore you can't do it. So we're using that. Even in places like San Francisco, yes, you heard me right, San Francisco, people are fighting back. The nut jobs in the San Francisco School Board came out and announced that they wanted to rename all the schools, like 44 schools in the city, because they all had racist names like Lincoln, okay? Well, guess what? Even in San Francisco, 10,000 people have signed petitions as the outrage grows over San Francisco's school renaming decision. The alumni are calling in and saying, we will not donate. And a lot of these schools get a lot of donations from the alumni, and they're pushing back in San Francisco. That's a good sign. That's a good sign, guys. We've got to fight the fight. And we're going to fight the fight mostly in the states because we can only play defense until 2022, okay, in the federal government. We're going to have to play offense in the states. And so we're going to try to pass all kinds of legislation in the states to back off these federal intrusions in the states' rights. Like I read an article that says the states can pass laws to stop the teaching of critical race theory. Okay, here's another example. A group called Look Ahead America says a thing they put out called State Legislative Policy Objectives, Fighting Corporate Censorship by Establishing Free Speech States. So they have this whole thing out that we can take to our legislatures and try to pass free speech laws in the state of Ohio or your state, wherever you are, that basically says if you censor people, you can't do business in our state. You can't do business with our state. We're going to have to do that at the local level with city councils and county commissioners, township trustees. We're going to have to fight the fight with whatever tools we've got to fight the fight and win. So I don't want to hear any, people just getting depressed and, oh, woe is us and the world is over, it's ended. I told you last week about Lech Walesa and Solidarity and Poland fighting back after 35 years under the thumb of communism. We are not going to spend 35 years under the thumb of socialism. We're going to fight because we have a lot more tools to fight with. We're not going to let them get away with it. But it's up to us. It's up to you and me to be smart. And what I'm thinking and what you need to be thinking about is it's not necessarily a political solution. Okay? That's what I talked about when I said we've considered third parties. We've considered a convention of states. We've considered martial law. We've considered civil war. We've considered all kinds of things. Primarying people. Are we staying with the Republican Party or are we getting out? The source of all of that is money. It's the globalists. It's the Berkshire Hathaways. It's the big banks. It's the hedge funds. It's Google and Facebook and Twitter. We've got to think about how we take their money. And again, getting off of Facebook and Twitter, right? It's already hurt them. They've lost, I think the latest count is like 61 or 81 billion because you left. I got news for you. I've been off of Facebook and Twitter and that stuff. It's a relief. I don't need them. I can send you emails and text messages. You can come to my website. You can text your friends. You can send them links from our website. They can't censor us if we don't use it. Okay? So they're not a real threat to us if we don't let them be. Okay? If we don't let them be. So go to wethepeopleconvention.org. If you feel like donating, please do, because it's going to cost money to fight the fight. And that's what we're doing. Send me your ideas. I know that you guys, I get unbelievable, comments and videos and just ideas from all over the country. And I try to write back. If you go to info@wethepeopleconvention.org, if you write to that, that's the easiest way for me to consume your information and respond to you. Keep them coming. We've got to figure this out. We've got to get the right ideas in place. We got to fight the COVID, right? We got to fight the masking stuff. We got to fight the radical environmentalists. It's all nonsense. Call it nonsense. The way to fight back is not to be quiet, it's to get louder. Okay? To question, to challenge them, to not be bullied. And we're going to talk more about that in the future, and we're going to come up with some ideas how you can do that better. Okay? But I really appreciate you listening to this podcast and watching it and sharing it. We'll do another one. I've been kind of getting into a once a week thing again. So we'll try to do that. I know some of you want shorter ones. So that's why I did the Maricopa County one. It was only like 10 minutes. I'll try to do more of that. But I will not waste your time, effort, or money. I always tell you that. So when I do a podcast, I really think it's important. I think you need to see it and it will help you. I'm not just going to do it because I want you to come to the website. That's dishonest. I'm not going to do that. If I got nothing to say, I'm going to say nothing. Okay? And when I say something, I think it's worth hearing. That's the standard that I hold myself to, and you should hold me to. So that's where we're at. I'll be back again probably by next week, maybe sooner. I'll send out a text and an email when that happens, so you'll know. Make sure I've got your email address and your phone number at wethepeopleconvention.org right on the front, okay? And we'll make sure you know when things happen. Thanks again for watching. You're listening to and watching the We the People Convention News and Opinion podcast, and my name is Tom Zawistowski.